Dave, welcome to the show. So great to have you here.
Brad, it's an honor to be on with you.
So, Dave, how would you describe who you are and what you do?
Well, people call me the father of biohacking, and I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a longevity expert, and I would say I'm really interested in human potential and consciousness. And I have created this biohacking movement because consciousness starts inside the cells in your body and it moves up. When people decide to become more powerful because they're healthier, they will inevitably become more conscious. And that's the kind of world we want.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, your work has been a profoundly significant influence on my own life. So thank you for the dedication you have placed on sharing these ideas with us. So I'd love to unpack a little bit of your business background and your entrepreneurial journey from Silicon Valley to now. Maybe you could start off with what got you into this area and how did you turn it into a business?
I'm an entrepreneur by nature. When I was 12 years old, I was reading Entrepreneur magazine. It just seemed like the most fun thing to do.
Yeah.
So given that, I started out in Silicon Valley. I was, an entrepreneur. I was a co-founder of a part of a company that held Google's first servers when Google was 2 guys and 2 computers, and the Facebook, and when Salesforce was 8 people. And I had a fantastic career. The part of the business I started did $100 million a quarter. And I made $6 million when I was 26 years old. I lost it when I was 28, by the way. I was in this little magazine called Entrepreneur magazine when I was 23 years old. And
hello, everybody. It's Brad Hook here, and I'm pleased to announce that my new book, Start with Values, is ready to pre-order. So if you're interested in living a more authentic life, reconnecting with what is most important to you, I think you'll enjoy this book. It makes a great gift for someone who's perhaps finding themselves struggling with work or life. And it's even better if you want to uplift or upgrade your performance. Inside, you'll find research, tools, thought experiments, decision-making guides, and much, much more to help you first define your core values, the top 3, so that you can easily remember them, you can access them, use them as tools for making better decisions, for helping you to rapidly navigate your way through life with less ambiguity and less uncertainty, to build a web of habits that form both a safety net and a springboard for your success. And really for you to experience more fulfillment. These moments of micro-fulfillment when you align your values with your actions and your behaviors and your emotions and your thoughts, and you say, wow, that was a good day. I was moving in the right direction. What I did made sense. It was meaningful. And even in times of high pressure, when you leverage your values as tools, you can diffuse some of that distress that we experience in times of challenge, uncertainty, and so forth. If you're interested, search for Start with Values in Google. You can also go to Penguin Books and type in Start with Values.
I was wearing the first product ever sold over the internet before the browser existed. It was a t-shirt that said caffeine, my drug of choice. And it has this molecule. It had on the t-shirt. And so I've always been the entrepreneur, but along the way, I hit 300 pounds. I got chronic fatigue syndrome. My brain just quit working. Had arthritis since I was 14 in my knees, and antibiotics for years for sinus infections. And before I'm 30, I've made a ton of money and lost a ton of money. But the doctor's like, Dave, you're at high risk of stroke and heart attack. And so I did what any sane person would do. I decided I would get my MBA at Wharton while working full time at a startup that we ended up selling for $600 million. And decided, though, I have to do something about this. So I worked out all the time, and it didn't work. I didn't lose a pound when I worked out for 18 months straight, 6 days a week. And I was on a low-fat, low-calorie diet. And I just did what was supposed to work, but it didn't work. And then I blamed myself for not trying hard enough. And it was that path of just being an entrepreneur that said, well, I've got to learn how to hack myself because the doctors aren't doing it. Here I am at work. Like, how do we take over a system that we don't know anything about. That's what hackers do. Like, I'm going to have to take over this system, the system of my body, so that I will, feel the way I want to feel. And that led me to start attending and then soon running a longevity nonprofit group, one of the first ones that met right outside Stanford University in Palo Alto. So I learned what is now biohacking from the leaders in the field of longevity when they were 80 and I was in my 20s. This was my hobby, my avocation. And I was working for a venture capital firm and decided I would start a blog. It was going to be a nonprofit blog, actually, written for entrepreneurs and executives and tech people in a language that would appeal to me, both when I was 19 or 20 and as a young entrepreneur. It was called the Bulletproof Executive. And I ended up not doing it through the nonprofit because my board of directors was arguing over the URL. I'm like, no. So I started my blog. My goal, 5 people are going to not go through all the suffering I've been through, and that's my win. And I made $250,000 a year. I had stock options in a publicly traded company as a VP. I had 2 young kids. I really didn't need to start a company. And for the first almost year, it was just, I'm starting a movement and I'm just sharing information, but more than 5 people care. And it took off in Silicon Valley and then very quickly with hedge fund managers and then Hollywood and the music industry and TV people, because these are the people who needed the most cognitive function. They needed to look a certain way and be able to show up with incredible energy demands. And pretty soon I'm, backstage with Third Eye Blind and Pink Floyd, Roger Waters. Like, what? I'm a computer hacker and I'm a coffee guy. And now I'm in Men's Health with my shirt off, even though I'm the 300-pound computer hacker from Jurassic Park. In my history, I was pretty big. And all these unlikely things happened. And soon this movement I started, with a conference, 100 guys, actually men and women, but more guys back then, at a bar in San Francisco, the first biohacking conference. I now run biohackingconference.com, 4,000 people coming to Austin. And that'll be in May this year. And this movement, it became a new word in the English language. In 2018, Webster's is there, and my name's in the dictionary online anyway. And it's been mentioned millions of times, and there are tens of millions of biohackers globally. And it's a movement that has its own life now. And I never trademarked the name biohacking on purpose because this is it's a thing for humans. And I started Bulletproof along the way, and I'm no longer associated with Bulletproof. My new coffee company is called Danger Coffee, because who knows what you might do, like the good kind of danger, the kind of entrepreneurial danger that comes from having enough energy to do what you want to do instead of what you're programmed to do.
Hey, Brad here. Would you believe that around 70% of the people who watch this podcast have not yet subscribed? It would mean the world to us if you click that subscribe button on whichever platform you use, so that we can stay connected with you and you'll receive notifications when we add new episodes. We really appreciate you coming and connecting with us and being part of our community. So all the best.
So it's been an incredible journey is all I can say. But it was all because I was desperate to make my body have the energy and the presence and the sense of peace that really leads to genuine power as an entrepreneur, power to show up the way I want to in my relationships, as a father, as a leader. And it's all almost internal felt state. But when you're tired all the time, you're sick all the time, and you're triggered all the time, it's hard to enjoy life, much less do anything meaningful. So I wanted to solve that for myself, and I just share the journey, and I still do.
Wow. Starting off with just wanting to impact 5 people, and well, you could count me in that 5, but there are millions and millions more, which is it must be quite fulfilling when you look back on how this has unfolded.
It is fulfilling, but there's a lot of ego work that's involved with being a good entrepreneur. And one of my companies has been running for about 10 years. It's called 40 Years of Zen. And entrepreneurs come and spend 5 days with my team of neuroscientists and facilitators. and we hook electrodes to your head and we show you what's going on in there and allow you to reprogram your triggers and performance tune your mind. I've spent 6 months of doing that. And I've studied with masters all over the planet in remote monasteries and things to understand how to do all that. And what's just incredibly important is there's different kinds of ego, but spiritual ego is the hardest one. We're like, oh, look at me, I'm so spiritual. And one of the things that I came across is, people setting goals. I'm going to, feed 1 billion people. I'm going to impact 1 million lives. It doesn't matter. It isn't the number of people that you reach that indicates whether you've done. Did you reach the people who would benefit from whatever it is you have? And so for me, 5 people, if they're the right people who needed it, that's exactly the same as reaching 5 million people, right? Did you reach the people who needed it? And when you're in the game of business, of course you want a bigger business, you want more revenues, more impact, all that kind of stuff. But I don't think it's measured by number of people. I think it's measured by the depth of the impact. So I'd rather, I don't claim I can do this, but if I knew how, I'd rather take 5 people and help them become fully enlightened than take 5 million people and help them lose 5 pounds. Like, is it really the number of people, or is it like how profound was the difference? So I'm looking for deep, full stack change in people who engage in biohacking. And I know that it takes time for people to get there. I also know that anytime someone takes that first step towards having more energy, you have more energy, that means you have more energy to evolve. And that's what really, really matters.
It's true. It's true. And in the work that I've done, I see it when an entrepreneur, for example, just spends a little bit more time balancing that performance mindset with care and self-care. Yeah. They start to upgrade their consciousness in a way. They start to feel more present. They start to be more compassionate. They start to look at what's the impact we're having rather than just KPIs and profits and so forth. Is that something that you've found?
It's funny that this is coming up. Earlier today, I led a 2-hour session for my high-level entrepreneur mastermind. It's called the Apollo Group. And I run it with Naveen Jain from Viome and Vishen Lakhiani from Mind Valley. And I spent a good hour talking about exactly this topic, where your inner state as an entrepreneur, from a health perspective, is reflected in your energetic state, and that's a reflection inside your company. So if you're in chaos because your health is crap, because you're not sleeping and you're not treating your body like a high performance machine, or you're in chaos because you haven't managed your most intimate relationships with your partner or your family, then your company will be in chaos. And how many times have we seen an entrepreneur who's killing it, and then they're killing it at work, but not at home?
Yep.
And then the company falters because the relationship falters. And all of this stuff we're designed for that to be kind of invisible to our consciousness, but these are things that are built into biohacking. The definition is the art and science of changing the environment around you and inside of you so you have full control of your own biology. And when you work towards that, it means that even if something happens in your business you don't like, instead of going, oh my God, it's the end, and then looking at your team and smiling, going, everything's fine. Like, everyone knows that it's not congruent. So if you've done the work, you can sit there and go, okay, something happened that I didn't want. I'm okay. And when you talk to your team, you can say, we're all right. We're going to overcome this. And when you say that, you're saying it with your full energetic field, your full body. And then people move and they're inspired and then they take action. So it's the lack of congruence between your speech and your action and your thoughts and your emotions. And when those are aligned, businesses grow and thrive. What creates that alignment, of course, is meditation and self-awareness, but it also means you set up the environment around you to make your body thrive. If you do that, then your mind can thrive, your heart can thrive. And sometimes we make the dumbest mistakes because we just don't know. Everything I did that led me to be 300 pounds, it was stuff I didn't know. And it was stuff that someone somewhere knew. And I at this point, I've interviewed 1,200 people on the Human Upgrade podcast, great masters of different fields of knowledge, and also hundreds of people in the longevity field in the nonprofit space. So I'm like, maybe I can learn from people who've already suffered it so I don't have to do it myself. I guess that way I'm pretty lazy.
Did it surprise you how the field of just self-improvement in general has evolved over the past few years? And I say that in the context of, I run workshops often for entrepreneurs to teach them about well-being and resilience. And in the past couple of years, you have people sitting there going, yeah, I heard about that on the Human Lab podcast or whatever. People are so much more tuned in to human potential and optimization. Did that come as a surprise, seeing as you pretty much you're one of the founding voices in this whole area?
It didn't come as a surprise at all. Like, this is an intentional action in the field of human consciousness. Even Andrew Huberman, he was on my podcast before he had a show. I helped to find him as one of the people doing this kind of research.
Yeah.
Even guys who were already well known, like Tim Ferriss, came on my podcast before he started his podcast.
Yeah.
Right. And Peter Attia, who I question as being a longevity doctor, but at least he's well known. He came on my show before he had a show. So it's my job to curate interesting people who are doing interesting things and to find them and then shine a light on them. And it's a privilege. And that's why there's been 500 million downloads of my podcast. It's a pretty large show. And people keep coming back because I will go from longevity to human consciousness, to nutrition, to fitness, to here's someone who's doing something you would never know about, a university researcher who discovered something amazing. And sometimes entrepreneurs, but usually not. Like, honestly, there's a lot of entrepreneur shows and there's a lot of entrepreneurs, unless it's an entrepreneur who did something that no one's ever done before that we can all learn from. My goal as someone who's, 500 million hours of podcasts is something like 100 human lifetimes, not counting 3,000 blog posts and 8 books and all that stuff. If people walk away from an hour spent with me and they got more than an hour's worth of value, that's awesome. But if they don't, and I'm just making a bunch of dick jokes, that makes me a mass murderer. I'm literally responsible for hundreds of lifetimes of human attention, which is a really big responsibility. So it's like, how can I find something that's teachable and learnable? And I keep working on that.
How do you stay at the cutting edge while navigating the inevitable criticism that comes your way? And I'm sure that you've had a lot over the years, like, oh, this is, this is woo-woo or whatever. But often these things end up being backed by research and become mainstream.
I have an incredible track record of being right on calling the future, both in tech. The first guy to sell anything over the internet before e-commerce had a name. The first data center company, the first shipping cloud computing. I beat Mark Andreessen by 1 day with what is, as far as we can tell, is the first pay-as-you-go provision on demand system, what we would now call cloud. And then I created biohacking. And I said in my first book, here's why C8 MCT oil is better, because you can tell. 5 years later, the research comes out that says, oh yeah, this raises ketosis more than all the other crap copycat MCT oils, right? I've built 2 different billion-dollar industries, collagen and MCT oil. And people are like, it doesn't work. Most of the critics, they were just bullied in somewhere between like 4th and 7th grade, maybe 9th grade. And they just grew up to be adult bullies. And you understand that it suddenly takes away their power. And today, one of my favorite things, I recognize we're playing the bully game when a critic comes out. Usually I just ignore it. I truly just don't care at this point. Joe Rogan tried to cancel me for a while. There's lots of people have said, this stuff doesn't work, except when I walk down the street, people see me and they stop me and say, Dave, I don't want to bother you, but your work changed my life. I've heard this 10,000 times.
Yeah.
That matters more than some armchair warrior who's probably eating corn dogs and has some guilt and whatever, is saying, I'm going to say something mean. One of my favorite things, I've lost 100 pounds. I have extra skin on my face from when I was obese. So I have lines here. And people will say, Dave, you look old. I'm like, you should see my lab test. But when they say I look old, I could just be like, oh my God, I'm going to get dysregulated. A lot of people do that. I just respond now. I say, that's not what your mom said. Like we're playing the bully game from 7th grade. I remember that. And of course, the people lose their mind and all the fans are just laughing. They're like, oh my God, like the implications there. But none of this is, who cares what people think about it? It doesn't matter. It feels like it matters. And what that is there's an operating system in your meat. I call it your meat operating system. It's there to keep you alive. And it knows that if people don't respect you, that you might get kicked out of the tribe and then a lion would eat you. So there's this fear of criticism, and it's there for a reason. And it's just not that it is relevant, but it is a good survival thing if we were living in tribes on the savannah. So understanding that my system might do that, you can reprogram the system, or you can just say, oh, look, it's feeling that way. It gave me this feeling based on criticism, but that doesn't mean I have to listen to the feeling. And at this point in life, people say mean things or they don't. I usually don't even read it. And if I do and they say mean things, it doesn't stick. But I had to go through some pretty good suffering from that. The biggest lesson there was, as Bulletproof was growing, I went on the Joe Rogan show, actually 3 times, and really profoundly changed Joe's life. And he was very effusive in his praise until one of the companies that he had major equity in decided to copy my product line. And all of a sudden, he went after my character for 18 months straight. He had an army of 25,000 organized trolls called the Death Squad who came to my social media. This is just adult bullies who all ganged up in an online. And they just, Dave, you're a con artist and a snake oil salesman. And that actually was pretty rough. It went from, Dave, thanks, your stuff is changing my life, like kind of a sacred thing, to just all this criticism. And that dysregulated me. And so I ended up doing the process from 40 Years of Zen and sitting down and going, yes, this is dysregulating me. It's because I actually was bullied and it was pushing an old button. So I went through and I reset it. I don't have that button anymore. And then reality became present. Every time Joe Rogan says that Dave Asprey is a bad man, I sell more coffee. That's the reality. But it felt like, oh no, what am I going to do? Hire a crisis PR firm. So maybe I just got really good at being criticized. But, at this point, if one of my biggest accomplishments in my career was getting listed on factcheck.org, which is, the government censorship site. Yeah. And there, I wrote a blog post about the pandemic business model. And I just went through the last 6 or 8 pandemics and looked at percentages and dollars and death rates and all that. And said, well, given the history of these, my prediction is that the actual death rate from this is 1/65th of what they initially report, because that's what it always is. Yeah. I was right. And man, I got censored and punished for that, but I don't care. Right. At this point, cancel one of the other things I like to say is cancel me harder, daddy. Like, what are you going to do? Right. So this though just has to do with having a reason for doing what you're doing. So in terms of facing critics, it's like, what critics?
I love that. Powerful. You mentioned getting rid of that button. Is that a process of introspection, or what I read recently, a nice word, involution, evolving internally? Is it meditation or just other practices, cognitive behavioral therapy or something else?
It turns out CBT and meditation don't work for that. Meditation, and I've been to the monasteries and all, and I've meditated for God knows how many hours. You're going to sit there and, get in a certain pose maybe, and you're going to allow the emotions to flow through. Notice the emotions, gently set the emotions aside. Yeah. All right, I'm a computer scientist. How about fuck that? If you have to take your energy to notice the emotion and gently set it aside, it is taking your energy. But at least you're not becoming reactive and being a jerk about it, but you still wasted energy on just allowing it to flow through. What if we could stop useless alerts from going off? Oh, like on your phone, you go and you turn off the alerts so that you can use your phone. What if you turned off the alerts in your nervous system so that instead of setting them aside, they just didn't get alerted? And that's what my practice is based on now. And that's what 40 Years of Zen does. So it's not about learning to notice the emotion and set that aside, although that's an epic skill. It's not about CBT, which is the same thing. Notice the emotion and behave yourself, young man. Yikes. Okay, those are both ways to function in the world. They just waste energy and they come at a cost. I'm all about, how do I go into my alert system in my hardware, in my body, and how do I turn off alerts that no longer serve me? So that instead of saying, I can't be triggered because I feel the trigger and I don't react to it, dude, you were triggered. You just became non-reactive, which is a skill. What I want to do is, I was not only non-reactive, I was non-triggered. And my next book that comes out in May is called Heavily Meditated. And I actually teach people the process to do that. It's not meditation. It is a combination of two different states that humans are capable of in order with the right visualization that allows you to just go in and turn off the alerts. And it creates so much extra energy that when people go through the 40 Years of Zen program, which is where I developed the technique, they go through there and 91.7% of people report a massive improvement in their relationships within 6 months of going through as their brain finishes rewiring. And that's because you became, instead of non-reactive, you became non-triggered and therefore non-reactive, which means your partner can lose their mind and you've got it, instead of you losing your mind in partnership with your partner, which is how most people do it.
Interesting. What else can people find in the 40 Years of Zen program? Is it neurofeedback techniques, biohacking? What else?
40 Years of Zen is a personal development program that's based on neuroscience. So you come in, we measure your brain waves so we can see strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, what's working, what's not working. We can predict personality and behavior things from that. Then for 3 days, you go for 8 to 10 hours a day, working with facilitators and neuroscientists with electrodes on your head, going in and seeing what your brain is actually doing and then learning how to change it. And then the last 2 days are performance tuning. Like if you take your car into a racing mechanic, they're going to say, do you want it to brake harder, accelerate harder, turn better, handle better? Like, what are the performance attributes that matter for you? And we help you dial those in by showing the brain what you want it to do. The brain will change. We're also increasing neuroplasticity so your brain can change like a young person. 40 Years of Zen is incredibly powerful, just as a neurofeedback personal development program. We just now made it the world's first psychedelic assisted neurofeedback program. And as an option, you can use medically prescribed ketamine to increase neuroplasticity and to actually have a deeper reset. And it's based on something called the reset process, which is what you do to go in and stop being bothered by things. And understanding it's not you that's actually bothered by these things. It's your protective operating system that's bothered, that then feeds you emotions about stuff. You can reprogram that. And I have 10 plus companies in my portfolio right now. I just wrote my next New York Times bestseller. I've done 2 episodes of the Human Upgrade podcast every week for more than 10 years. And I'm a father of 2 teenagers. I'm in a healthy relationship. And I like my life. I couldn't have done that if I was spending a bunch of energy noticing emotions and setting them aside and being a good CBT. You know, I behaved myself today, even though I was losing my mind. I'm not losing my mind. I'm not that stressed. I'm not anxious. And if I do feel some kind of anxiety in my body, I usually know what it was. And if I don't, there's a quick inquiry process to figure it out. Most entrepreneurs I know of today, their biology is creating stress because they're not sleeping well. Their light environment is screwed up. And there's so much going on with toxins and the wrong diet that they're feeling a physical stress that translates as an emotional stress. And then most entrepreneurs also don't pay attention as much as we could to our innermost personal relationships with our primary partner. And how many times have you seen an entrepreneur thrive in their business and destroy their marriage? Mm-hmm. Right. So the trick there is, what are the tools and techniques to run your personal relationships with the same level of rigor that you run a business that's growing? And it turns out there are skills and techniques, and I'm now an advisor to and shareholder in a company called We Deepen that teaches entrepreneurs and successful couples, people who are already in a relationship or people who are looking for a relationship. We do masterminds the same way I do entrepreneur masterminds in the Apollo group. And the results are profound because the entrepreneur who wins is the one who has a healthy body, so there's enough energy, has a healthy mind because you've gone through and you've learned how to be at least less triggered or less reactive, and has healthy relationships. If you set those things up, wow, I have a lot of energy at the end of the day for new ideas and for fun and play and creativity and intuition. And my businesses are doing what they're supposed to do. That's a tall order, but that's the direction we all want to head. And biohacking is the single biggest thing to do it. Change the environment around you, includes your food, includes your lighting, includes when you wake up, it includes your relationships. Right? So how do I set all those up so that I'm sitting in my power? That's the biggest gift any human can have, even if they're not an entrepreneur.
Any tips for CEOs who want to work smarter and not harder? And you mentioned quite a few there. But if I'm a CEO and I say to you, Dave, I really want to uplift my performance, I want to thrive, I want to flourish, where should I start? What would you say?
I would say you've got to get the data. So you know your earnings, you know your cash balances, you know your business metrics. You probably don't for your body. You can go to axo.health, and you get an advanced longevity panel. Someone will come to your home or office and draw blood. And then you'll get a performance dashboard that says, how am I doing? How old am I compared to my calendar age? And what systems are working and what aren't working. This is the same as doing a marketing audit. Oh, look, my ROAS isn't as good as I thought it was. I'm spending too much on headcount compared to my peers. You can do the same thing for your inflammatory systems, right? So your body is something that you manage as well as you manage your business. And that's a great place to get started. Buy something that does good sleep tracking. There's a system called Sleep Space, where I'm an advisor. You can get an Oura Ring or a Whoop, your Apple Watch. Your morning readiness score. It tells you whether your emotional stress or your physiological stress, whether you recovered from it or not. And if you wake up in the morning and your score is low and you're saying, I'm going to go do a CrossFit workout, fly across 3 time zones and have meetings till midnight and a few glasses of wine, I hate to tell you, man, your biology isn't going to support that today. You didn't do something right last night. So then maybe you skip the workout. Yeah. And this is a big challenge for entrepreneurs because if something is good, more is better. That's built into the entrepreneur mindset. It turns out when I look at the data, it's actually recovery that matters more than stimulation. I've got one of my companies is a franchise called Upgrade Labs. And we've got 32 locations in the process of opening, and some are open, some are working on it. And people come in and they say, I want results. And the results are different. Some people want muscle, or they want to lose fat, or they want their energy, or they want to be smarter, or they want to manage stress better, or more VO2 max, or just longevity. And we use an AI model and data to say, well, here's where you are. And since this is your goal, do this cool biohacking tech that provides the most return on investment of time and energy. And if someone says, look, I want my cardiovascular system better, I can get your VO2 max to improve with 94% less time than going to a spin class. 94% less time. 15 minutes a week of cardio where you will never sweat is 6 times better than an hour a day of cardio. So, wait, you mean when I'm dealing with my health, I'm investing energy, time, and then dollars? Yeah, that's how it works. One of my favorite examples, right? If I was to say, look, you can add 20 quality years to your life. All you have to do is wake up every morning and punch yourself in the eye as hard as you can 10 times. Would you do it? No one's going to do that because we actually are wired to avoid suffering. And there's nothing wrong with choosing to avoid suffering. And if you're unwilling to ever suffer, then there's a problem as well. So one of the techniques that's in Heavily Meditated when it comes out is I actually teach people how to deliberately suffer for 1 minute in a way that changes your neurochemistry for the rest of the day. And understanding there is a system and it does make sense. That's the thing to do. So you want to get started? Get your numbers. What's your blood sugar look like? What's your inflammation look like? Where's your testosterone? Where's your thyroid? These are KPIs that are just as important as your earnings. And if you look at it like that, you go, oh, I'm underinvesting in those things. What is the smart investment that I can make? And the Axo Health app, which is a part of Upgrade Labs, we actually suggest, well, if you want this goal and your numbers look like this is a supplement that's going to work, or this is a lifestyle thing that's going to work. One of the biggest ROI things that you can have is quality sleep. And it doesn't mean more sleep. It just means sleep where you get good mileage per gallon for the time you spend asleep. So I was just going to see if I had someone on my desk. You mentioned Andrew Huberman recently. He's talking about these red glasses. 10 years ago, I started a company called True Dark. And we've actually filed a couple patents on specific types of optical filters that you can wear in your glasses at night that cause you to get more sleep in less time. And we've published a neuroscience study with True Dark that shows your brain waves shift in 15 minutes as if you're meditating. So you're saying, oh, wait, you mean for an hour before bed, I put on cool glasses from True Dark, and then my sleep architecture changes and my stress levels change? Yeah. Oh, and you don't get jet lag too. I fly all over the world with zero jet lag because I know how to wear the right glasses at the right time. This is a low investment, low pain, low stress. And it's $100 or something in order to now get better sleep at night, and you can measure it. So an example of something like a True Dark glasses, if you don't know that, it's like, well, I've got these bright lights all over my house and I sleep just fine. If you measure your sleep, no, you don't. So I have dimmer switches in my house. And when I'm traveling, I'm wearing the True Dark glasses. And then I have more energy. I recover more at night. 80% of improvement comes from recovery, not from stimulation. And entrepreneurs are wired for stimulation. And that's one of the reasons that our health goes down, our relationships go down.
What would you say to an entrepreneur who doesn't realize it, but they've actually become addicted to that feeling of being stressed? And I've met many who, they get there, they open their inbox and there's not enough emails. So something must be broken. So they just create a flurry of noise to stress everyone else, just to create that. I suppose they're addicted to the feeling of adrenaline and cortisol and the elevated heart rate. What would you say?
I don't know if it's a true classical addiction.
Sure.
But unquestionably, cortisol and adrenaline feel great. And the thing about anger, which is more correlated with cortisol, anger is a great spark to cause change, but it's a terrible fuel, because if you rely on anger to fuel you, it will burn you up.
Yeah.
But being angry about some, like, God damn it, why do I have to press the button in the elevator? This is stupid. Okay, you're going to create a solution for a better elevator button, right? And it's going to be an entrepreneurial thing. So like there's a value to that, but allowing anger to stay resident so that you can feel some cortisol and adrenaline is stupid. So you see a lot of entrepreneurs who say, well, I'm just going to become a triathlete. And if I just work out for 2 hours a day, every day, they're burning off their adrenaline, but they're raising their cortisol and they're overtrained. Right? And they get sick all the time. They're kind of miserable, but every time they don't feel good, they just go exercise. So the reality is you got to learn to be real comfortable with being bored. That's what meditation's for. Or neurofeedback, I think, is much faster, which is why I've done my 40 years of Zen. And learning how to do that in a way where you're okay if you got something to do, you're okay if you don't have something to do. That's important. Another thing that's a really powerful skill is just to understand all humans have the ability to recall an emotional state and to replay it. So if you think about something that really pissed you off, if you pay attention to what it felt like in your stomach and your heart and your body, the hairs on the back, like you can bring like that feeling of anger, right? Well, you can also replay the state when you played with a puppy, or when you first held one of your children, or the time you sold your first company, or a time you felt really loved. all of those, it's like your playlist on Spotify. You just pick what one you want to play and pay attention to it, and you can do these things. That can be really, really powerful, because if you're in a state of, oh my God, I don't have anything to do, well, play the emotion from a time when that was okay, right? And play is a really valuable word there too. There's many times in my life as an entrepreneur where you sacrifice play and fun or even intimacy because like, gotta work. And I think play is terribly underrated for entrepreneurs in general. And how do adults play? The number one way adults play is by sex. That's what we do. And I do go to Burning Man where you play. I go to parties where there's dancing because dancing is important. And I have playfulness and humor in my relationships. And that will keep you young. And that's also just something you can replay. What's that time? It was just joyful and fun. If you sacrifice joy and intimacy and fun and play and humor because you have to be a serious entrepreneur, you'll just be a dick. Right? There's better ways to be an entrepreneur than being a dick. I know I've done that very well too.
Yeah, I was on a plane and I was watching a David Attenborough documentary, and he said something that has stuck with me ever since. He said, "It is through play that the lion cubs develop agility." And I've been in boardrooms around the world where I see agile scribbled all over the place. And the missing ingredient is that play. Like, let's have some fun while we do all of the serious stuff, because otherwise, what's the point?
It is. It's what's the point? And when I'm working with entrepreneurs in the Apollo group, especially, it's when we do our retreats, there's always play. Like, what do we do that's fun together? Right. And when you learn how to play with your friends again, and sometimes it's just being silly, sometimes it's going fishing or going bowling or doing something that you probably wouldn't have done just because you get to do it without an agenda. That is something that will improve the performance of your business. Whether you do it yourself as a leader or you do it with your team, it's important.
What can people expect in your forthcoming book, Heavily Meditated?
In Heavily Meditated, I am teaching the most valuable things I know about meditation and about the kind of things we just talked about, including the reset process, which is the crown jewel at 40 Years of Zen. I am teaching a very specific program in this book so that you know how to go in and turn off the triggers. So I don't want you to know, oh, I'm feeling triggered, but I'm behaving. I want you to say, I'm no longer feeling triggered. Because the sense of peace that brings you allows you to do a lot more good in the world. It allows you to have more fun. It allows you to have better relationships. It's the most important thing you can do. And when you master this, and it is easier with neurofeedback, but you can do it yourself. I've done it in rooms of thousands of people. And I'll walk them through the reset process. And there's tears in people's eyes going, I didn't realize I was stuck on that. All the executives in my companies go through 40 Years of Zen as soon as they start working for me, because I want them to be less triggered in our executive meetings, right? And when they're done, they go, God, why didn't I know that? You don't know the things holding you back because they're supposed to be invisible to your conscious mind. So what I teach is, here's how to do that. And I'm all about return on investment. And I mentioned earlier, you invest your energy, your suffering, and then your money. Because if it's just too much work, you won't do it. If it's too painful, you won't do it. And if it's too expensive, you won't do it. But if you're an entrepreneur who's had some success, you can probably afford the money, but you don't have the energy or the suffering capacity. So I go through all of the things you could do if you wanted to be more conscious, to be able to meditate. What are the things that have the highest ROI? And it's not what you would expect. It's, well, okay, I could just sit and meditate, but there are amplifiers and accelerators you can apply on top of it. So if you're a marketing kind of CEO like me, I'm a marketing and a technology guy, visionary kind of thing versus operational. So those things are inherent to me, but I need to be able to access those states. And if you're a different kind of CEO, you might be just a rigorous operator and all that. You go through this, you go, oh, okay, here are the things I can do that are going to allow me to achieve the goals of meditation with the least possible time. And when you achieve those goals, you get better at doing what you already do. So that's in there. And you can apply, for instance, breath work on top of meditation. It works better. And I go through the science. And there's some things that I popularize in biohacking, like red light therapy and cryotherapy. And you'll hear everyone in the biohacking space talking about those. And I was the first guy to talk about that stuff, which is great. I'm like planting seeds in the world of biohacking as an industry. And just the analysts are now saying biohacking will be a $70 billion industry by 2031. And like I started this, that's insane. And probably $16 billion industry now, maybe 63 billion, depending who you believe. But so those things are, I probably mentioned them briefly in the book, but those aren't the focus. The focus is, what are you doing? What's the process internally to do this? What are the external amplifiers that allow you to get this progress in the least possible time? We don't have time for you to spend 40 years sitting in a cave to get the skills. And that's what it used to take. 20 to 40 years in a cave, meditating for hours a day, you'll get there. I'm like, hurry, meditate faster. And that's what this book is about. So let's get it done. And let's get it done with the benefit and the gift of data and science and technology, so that you know what to do to get results. Because the worst thing you could do is meditate tomorrow morning and do a crappy job of it, because then you just wasted an hour and you didn't get much benefit. Another thing, you go to bed tonight and sleep for 8 hours and get 5 minutes of deep sleep the entire night. You wasted 8 hours. So why'd you even go to sleep then? Right? So learning how to do these things in a way that works best, that's what's in the book. And this is the most meditative of all the books I've written. And I've written a major book on cognitive function, one on longevity, New York Times science bestseller kind of books. This is that book for meditation and human progress.
Do you think psychedelics play a role as a tool that can accelerate your progress?
There's a whole chapter on different psychedelics and what they do, and looking at them from a progress perspective versus a fun perspective. And there is a role for psychedelics, and there's also danger with psychedelics. I don't mind danger. Skiing is dangerous. Like danger is not a bad word to me. In fact, it's called danger coffee, because who knows what you might do. It's the good kind of danger. Yeah. So with psychedelics, I think ayahuasca is probably the riskiest one. And it's the one most targeted at entrepreneurs. And I think I take some blame for that, because I talked about this very early in the biohacking movement. Just as an example of things I've tried. I would much rather see someone who's new to that do ketamine with a trained therapist, because the data is so strong, it's pure, it's well understood. And from there's also great evidence for mushrooms. Going into the more esoteric stuff, I've tried the vast majority of psychedelics, and some of them have, I'm just going to call it a spiritual risk to them. And I would just say, don't start with ayahuasca. Do that at the end, if nothing else works, and go to the jungle and do it with someone who's trained with the Shipibo people. I know too many people, including some who identify as biohackers, will say things like, I've had 87 ayahuasca experiences, and I'm a MMA fighter. Dude, at what point do you know it's not working after 87 times? The role of psychedelics is to show you a state and to kick a door open so you can step through it. But if you're doing something like that often, that can be a little much, and you're not going to be able to see it. So I just would encourage people to always have facilitation and integration afterwards, and to use psychedelics as one of the many tools. It is not going to get you there, but it may show you a path.
Excellent. Dave, how can people connect with you? Well, it's very easy. Just do a search, but where would you like people to go?
Go to daveasprey.com for all this stuff. Go to Danger Coffee if you'd like to try coffee that actually works better because it puts minerals back in your body in addition to being amazing coffee. And if you want to work with me, go to ownandupgradelabs.com. You can become a franchisee. And if you want to upgrade your brain radically, 40yearsofzen.com. I'd love to see you at any of these. These are offerings to get you there faster. Each one of those, it works better than what you do today. And that's what entrepreneurs are supposed to do. We make the world a better place. And if you're the kind of entrepreneur who's, I'm going to copy that thing and make it cheaper, dude, take a deep breath and do something better. Our job is to improve things. That's why we exist.
Love it. So Upgrade Labs, could it become global, or is it global already?
We're across the US and Canada now.
Yep.
And I'm happy to do deals for entire countries. It's hard to open a single franchise in a country. So if someone's there saying, I'd like to open a network across the country, we know how to do that. The president of Upgrade Labs is the former COO of Orange Theory and Equinox. So we're very serious about scaling this thing to become a very large company, because if you're going to invest 30 minutes this week in your physical or mental performance, Upgrade Labs will provide the highest return on that 30 minutes you'll get. And my job is to make it so you come to Upgrade Labs less, because it works better. And we're using AI to do that. It's not about selling you a gym membership you never use. There's $400 million a year of ghost gym memberships. This is a thing where you go there at least once, and usually a couple times a week, because it's worth it, and because you can see your numbers change. So that's a new thing in the world's first biohacking facility.
Very exciting. Dave, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. Any final thoughts for those who stuck with us to the end?
There's a Henry David Miller quote, and it's, "The goal of life is not to accumulate power, but to radiate it." And as an entrepreneur, like, be the powerful guy in the room. And if you're that human being who just shows up and like, wow, that person's really in integrity, your company will grow and you'll just be a lot happier. So entrepreneurship is a personal development path, and don't forget that.
Dave, thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning into this episode. Check out the links in the show notes, and we'll see you next time.